Good evening, Mayor Vivian Flowers.
Good
Thank you for
evening.
joining us here on a holiday, but
Yes.
obviously we're here for a good reason, a good cause. So I think I'll start with just allowing you to speak to whatever it is that brought you here and why you were so adamant about speaking on this when you were ready.
Well, first, thank you for this opportunity and for your patience because, like many other outlets, there was a desire for immediate information, and all of the information wasn't gathered, and it's still not all gathered. But I was adamant because we were dealing with a situation where there was a death in a city facility. So for that very reason, there's a different level of responsibility. There's not a response like our first responders respond to calls when something has happened. It's a little bit different. Excuse me, as I mentioned at the press conference yesterday, it hits differently as well. So once I found out, which was a couple of hours after everything that happened, which is something that we will also have to deal with, I made sure to question everyone, to watch the video, to look at as much documentation as I could in that moment, because it was really unbelievable for me. And this is one thing, a lot of times in this position I say that, you know, this is part of the territory, it's what I signed up for. And believe me, when I signed up to run for mayor and campaign, this is not something that I ever thought that I would have to contend with, but I'm in the position. And I ran on transparency and accountability, and transparency and accountability don't just happen when things are going well. And, you know, I love my job. I love to report about good things and about progress. But, you know, it is the job of the press to be that fourth estate and to ask questions and to hold the city and government accountable. And it is our job as government to be responsive, to answer to FOIAs when appropriate, when legal. And it is our job to answer tough questions, even when it hurts. And that's why I'm here.
And so I don't think my questions are too tough, but we'll see. So you did an internal review from your office.
Yes.
You mentioned yesterday also that the incident is still under investigation, so it's not much there that we can get. But from your review and from your findings, what would you say was the most concerning for you?
I think I started with a big concern about just communication. As I mentioned in the press conference, many people didn't know that I had a 3 p.m. meeting to address a previous event or incident that happened involving a brandishing of a weapon out in the parking lot. And that's the tough thing, is to be able to say that that happened in my city on my watch. And while obviously I can't be everywhere controlling everybody, my response can be strong. My response can be one that ensures that we use all of our resources, all of our man and woman power to make sure that as best we can ensure that these things don't happen again, to learn the lessons from the things that happen. And so communication and timing was something that I had planned to address that day, but delving into everything that I could see, that I could read, that I could learn from talking to people to find out what all is going on, aside from that which people call me about. I mean, issues at the Aquatic Center weren't new, and I have done my best to respond to issues, whether it's the chlorine levels, the heat of the pool, the hours that are open, clear bag policy that I had removed last year but put back in place last year with my director, but that wasn't done. So those are the kinds of things that on its face, as it relates to this particular department, I have to look at and work with my city council to see what policy changes we put in place, work with leadership to see what kinds of changes. And we've done some of that and we'll continue. And that's always just an ongoing effort. But I came in, and I'll close with this on this question. I came in with a focus on making sure that every department creates standard operating procedures, because that did not exist. And I knew coming in that that is something that we needed to make sure to do, so that institutional memory, know-how, expertise, experience doesn't leave with people who retire.
And I wanted to backtrack because I think you kind of touched on my second question. You said that you ran on full transparency and honesty in communication. And so I think from reading the comments on Facebook, which probably don't really matter in this instances, but it's appropriate to address it. You did remain quiet for a little bit, but why was it important for you to kind of get all of the facts before you did speak publicly?
To get all of the facts. I mean, and that is because of the seriousness. I mean, I think in any instance, we see that when we are dealing with our response to a call, a fire, even a termination. Those things can be controversial, but certainly when there is a death that results in an environment where city workers, city leadership are responsible for making sure that that facility is safe, we have to get all of the facts. And I think, so that's number one, and we will continue to operate in that way. But aside from that, there's also a level of sensitivity, I think, that was necessary for the privacy and the period of initial mourning for a family that I know was in shock. And I just did not feel that it was appropriate for me to step out and make statements about Mrs. Collins at all and not have conversation with the family, not have all of the facts, because obviously they want to know what happened, and so we don't want to say anything wrong. We don't want to say anything that's not factual. And that is the only reason that we don't call it a drowning. We don't know yet. The crime lab has not shared its report, and based upon my conversation with our county coroner, that will not occur for another 60 plus days. And so we will be patient, and we will wait to hear what that outcome was, and act accordingly as a governmental body. We will act accordingly. I will act accordingly as a human being in terms of how we communicate and continue to communicate with the family, with the Collins family.
And you were able to kind of watch the surveillance video of Ms. Collins in the pool area. And from what you watched, what did you learn or what changed about your understanding about what happened?
So in the first week, I got clarity that according to the standards of the Board of Health, that the number of lifeguards for opening the entire facility was deficient. That's a fact. The standard that they had been operating under was based upon a ratio of 1 lifeguard for every 15 people. That's what I was told consistently. That is not what is in the standards or the rules and regulations for pools in the state of Arkansas. We learned what that is, and we are adhering to it.
And from my understanding, there was like an obstructive view. I think a pillar that may have been in the way that the lifeguard on duty wasn't able to see Ms. Collins. Can you kind of address that or speak to kind of how that happened, or if that's been an ongoing issue?
It had not been an ongoing issue. That has more to do, I think, with the design of the building, just in terms of that obstruction being there and the circumstances as to why he did not have a straight view. And based on my conversation with the lifeguard and others, he was where, at the front of the building, and it's a pretty large space, where the class was. And there are certain other dynamics and things that were told to me that I think would be improperly interpreted as excuses or anything like that. And that's why I wouldn't speak about it. But and they don't matter, because the bottom line is we have lifeguards and this happened. We need to know why it happened and make sure that we learn from what happened to optimize the safety of the facility for our residents and for people who visit.
Now, Ms. Collins, according to the report, she went unnoticed for nearly an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Is this due to the 1-to-15 ratio, or would you say she was just in the area where she was unnoticeable?
I won't say what it's due to. I'm going to leave that at this point to the criminal investigation. What I will say is, once I learned all of the facts of what happened and saw the timeline, I created my own timeline and took notes. I know that what we can say is that the people who were there, whether it was both lifeguards at different points in time, and even another patron who was in a jacuzzi adjacent to the whirlpool that Mrs. Collins was in, could not see her. So it was never a situation where anyone's intent or lack of focus under the circumstances wasn't there. And I can promise you that the lifeguards who were there at different points in time in that day were horrified. And I have recommended that they get counseling. It's not anything you ever think that you'll need. It's not something you think about, but that goes back to, you know, the standard operating procedures. What if something happens? You know, how do we communicate with the public? How do we communicate with affected members and their families? How do we communicate with leadership? All of that stuff seems like a weird thing, you know, because you assume something like that would just not happen because you have lifeguards there. But there are processes, procedures, and standards, including what I found to be some national standards, which we will employ to the best of our ability. But that isn't required. You know, some folks have said to me personally, y'all just need to deal with all the issues and do what's required. And some of that stuff you talked about was too much. And I disagree. I think that in any circumstance, there is a minimum standard. And I think that what we have in what the state board requires, that doesn't mean they're not high standards, but it is the minimum standard by which we must operate. I don't think we have to stop there. And, you know, coming into this position as mayor, you meet with the leadership in all the departments. Many people have been there for a long time. Some people were there for a year or two or whatever. And it is my job, whether I'm mayor or city manager, strong mayor, whatever, to ask the questions, to monitor, to hear from people, to hear from employees. I have an open door policy. And then operate accordingly. And that's what we're doing.
And you kind of mentioned the lifeguards getting kind of mental help speaking with therapists, I'm going to assume, or is it safe to assume that?
I'm saying that that's what I recommended. I don't know what they did, and even if they did, for HIPAA reasons, I wouldn't say, but I just think that it's important for people to know that, you know, they have a job to do, they had a job to do, and while they were there, this tragedy occurred. And even though they weren't there, I wasn't there, the tragedy occurred, and I was struck. I mean, there were people in Pine Bluff who grieved with the Collins family, many people who knew Mrs. Collins. And so this is not just a situation you read about and you see a name on the page and assume the worst about the people involved, and that's what it is. You know, we're all human beings. No one intended for this to happen, but it's our responsibility, so we take responsibility, and we do everything we can to make sure it never happens again. Can't promise that. I mean, I think in the same week, there was a shooting at another Arkansas facility. We've had school shootings all over the country. We can't control people, we can't control circumstances, but we can always do better. We can always respond in a way that is human. You know, I have tried to block out the noise and be the best mayor that I can. I love my job, I love my community, I love my people. I can't please all the people all the time. Some people, there's nothing I could do to please them, and that's okay. They are free Americans, and they are citizens, they are residents, they have a freedom to speak. I don't have to always like it, but I respect people's right to speak freely, and at the end of the day, though, I have a job to do, and that's to make things better in Pine Bluff for everyone in the state and in the world who come and who live there.
That's good, because that brings you to my next question, and it's how do you respond to that criticism that changes are only occurring now that Ms. Collins has lost her life?
I mean, that's not true. And I said this yesterday to some residents who were there. I have gotten calls about the Aquatic Center since I first got in there, and before even. And I think I mentioned that. People have called me about the temperature of the pool, the hours of the facility. I think initially we were closed on holidays, and you know, we had to work, you know, together and say, okay, what are our standards? What do we want to be and do with this facility? It's a quality of life asset. So, you know, we have dealt with those things, the chemical training, making sure we have someone in there to ensure that the chemical balances of the pool are correct, making sure that there's not too much chlorine before that training was had. That has happened since I've been mayor, and it happened because someone called and said there's a problem, and we responded. Didn't always happen right away, because you know, you've got to spend the people's money. There's a whole procurement process. But what I can say is that when I am contacted as mayor, I do my best to respond. Have to prioritize, because I get calls from, you know, situations like this down to, you know, people having a complaint about the way a city worker talks to them. It's all important, but you have to prioritize. You have to prioritize, and we do.
And so my next question is, because I did see this in a report, and I think I saw a couple things on Facebook or so, was the letter of resignation from the director. Is that, I don't want to speak for you or the director, but why was that, or how did that come about?
Let me say this. It came about from my understanding. You know what, I won't even say what precipitated it. There were people at the meeting who love the director. He is not only serving as director under a restructuring that occurred before I got there, but also he has been a long time water aerobics instructor. And, you know, he calls he calls the people who attend his class the mermaids. And I know he does a good job. When I came on board, Mayor Washington asked me to meet with him before she hired him, wanting to ensure that when I came in, I wouldn't make that change. And I didn't, because I heard from him, I heard from people in the community, people who were members of the facility. And so I left it how it was, and, you know, treated him like every other director in terms of how we receive reports and engage in our retreats and engage in our monthly cabinet meetings. But that's how I, or anyone who oversees leadership for departments within the city or a company, would operate. You work with that director and communicate with them, and together you make sure that problems are addressed and resolved. And that's how we have worked together. And what I will say is I did have a conversation. He told me that he would like to resign during that conversation. And I asked him from that statement if he wished to continue offering his classes, and he ultimately said yes. That's how that ended. And so.
Was this before or after the death of Miss Collins?
It was after.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what assurances can you give kind of to families, like for a tragedy like this? Like, I know you said like we can't control the circumstances, but what are you guys putting in place to kind of make sure something like this doesn't happen if it was to happen?
So we took some corrective action and some things that I saw when I did my walkthrough and met with staff for the first, during that week, before the weekend. And, but we have a long-term plan that it's a $12 million facility that is just 7 years old. And like many other parts of the city, maintenance has been deferred. If you ever go in the facility, you will see that it is beautiful. We have good workers, and then we have young people. We have 10 part-time lifeguards. Again, unless issues are communicated or unless there becomes a problem, you don't know to act. Now we know. There are other issues we've resolved, but again, I think that what people can look at is to see the seriousness with which we are dealing with this. We are not running from our responsibility. We are not running from what happened. We're not hiding what happened. It's horrible. But we have to be honest with the people in order to maintain credibility with the people. So there are no lies have been told. No lies will be told. And we will do everything that we can to take corrective action now and in the future. This is a facility where safety, really across the city, that's one of my primary priorities, is public safety, and this is inclusive of that.
What will you say you, and along with your staff, y'all have learned from this particular event?
I would say that, I think the learning curve here is a response and a reaction to a tragedy that has never happened before, and that we are going to work diligently to ensure never happens again.
And you mentioned in your presser yesterday that you guys are going to be implementing new safety measures to kind of, I think it was like more cameras, metal detectors. Can you kind of touch bases on that?
Yeah, and I'm happy to. I'm glad you asked that question, because it kind of goes back to, how do we assure the people? It's not going to be through words, okay? If it were me, and I keep saying this, I have attempted to not have attempted. I have acted in a manner that I would expect a mayor to act if my mother lost her life in a public facility of the cities. And so in addition to the things that we are doing to address that, there's a whole other incident that I covered and mentioned. Safety is something that's on the minds of our members. Now that has come to me from a member. And I think that we have to respond. So we meet minimum standards as it relates to safety, but that is not good enough. We don't want to not do anything when something happened in that case. There wasn't a life lost in that case. So we don't assure people's safety by saying, well, thank God everything happened, it's okay, we're going to keep doing things in the same way. When this is a facility where people bring their kids, they're supposed to stay with them. And I learned that sometimes that doesn't happen, but that's something that we address, right? Seniors come there to exercise. People of all ages come there to use the jacuzzi or the therapy pool and the whirlpool. You know, Pine Bluff is the city of progress. I say it all the time. And again, it's very easy to tout that and to repeat our slogan after Juneteenth, when we doubled our numbers and we did the line dance and it was a safe event and everybody had a good time. And, you know, people can't stop making Facebook comments about that. That's easy to talk about how we're the city of progress, but progress also has to come in the face of tragedy. Progress also has to come if anybody makes a mistake, if there is an oversight, if there is a design flaw. And I'm not saying that that was the case in this, but I'm giving you some examples. We can't just say, okay, we hope something doesn't happen again. So under all circumstances, but certainly if someone, if something results in the death on city property, I would hope that the people would expect that we do more after something like that happens.
And what does more look like? I think
it is listed. Let me say this: there are several things that are outlined, and I think you mentioned some of them. Additional safety measures, making sure the equipment and the facilities are safe and clean. You know, all of those things. We had a standard, and every time I walked in the Aquatic Center, it's like I said, it's a beautiful facility. But when you look a little deeper, sometimes when you go, hey, wait a minute, let me spend a couple of hours. Now that is not my job in terms of my everyday duty, but it is now because I'm the mayor. And now the tragedy happened, the violence in the parking lot happened, incident reports. I saw there have been incidents going all the way back to the time that the Aquatic Center opened that I never knew about, right? But that, because you're supposed to take them, whether someone trips and falls, whether someone almost drowns. Those lifeguards have saved many lives over the years. And we take incident reports, right? So that's something the public doesn't see. But it is our job to make sure that we document, that we do better, that we make progress.
And lastly, let's kind of switch gears a little bit. The incident in the parking lot, I think Chief, he made it clear yesterday that it's still an ongoing investigation, but just a little bit about that and the presser. I think you mentioned security guard at the door, metal detectors.
Right.
I don't want to say stemming from that incident, but just overall safety for the city of Pine Bluff at the Aquatic Center?
Now, yeah, that particular incident is closed. That particular incident, there was an immediate action on the part of the police, and I think that evening resulted in an arrest with 2 assault charges, I believe. So again, this is something that happened. What do we do to make sure that we're safer? We spent $12 million to build that building. People pay anywhere from $15 to several $100s for individual or family memberships. Why would we not look at that situation and say, you know, where can we put cameras outside? Because some of that, it has a deterrent effect. It's not necessarily we're going to put cameras out and we're going to be able to check everything and see anything suspicious. There is a deterrent effect when you have these metal detectors, or more, their technology has risen now where you have they're called weapons detection systems. I think it's our duty to look at that and see what we can put in place to ensure that when people walk in the Aquatic Center, they know that we are committed to the safety of everyone in that building. And if anything gets out of hand, you know, people who don't follow the rules will be suspended or banned. If they violate the law, they will be arrested. And we are using the technology to make sure that we can do that without loss of life. That is our goal.
And lastly, this is my last question, I promise. We talked on the phone and you said that you kind of want to address some things here that you were not going to speak on during the press conference. I just want to know, did I give you the opportunity to do so? And if not, is there anything more you would like to say?
Yes, absolutely, you did that. And I think in the first question that you asked me, you know, kind of why are we here? First of all, you all were the first ones to ask for an interview, and I made that promise early on. And honestly, I might not have done it had I been asked on the back end, because we took such an exhaustive sort of period of time and process. You know, you can see our methodology and see that I did interviews and did walkthroughs and looked through documentation, checked where there may have been standard operating procedures, which our pool tech has created. So we took that time, but I wasn't twiddling my thumbs, and neither were the other directors who assisted in this process. We still have a lot of work to do as well, but I'm grateful that you asked, I think, questions to allow for a deeper dive, and have, you know, I know all of it won't air. Everybody tells me I'm long-winded. I just want all, because I want all the information. So, you know, I'm trying to get better at that. I'm not good at sound bites. But, you know, I just think it's important that we be a city where, when we say we're transparent, that we say that there will be accountability, and it won't always be swift, but it will be fair, and it will be based on facts, and it will be real. It will never be anything else.
Now, will you release the cause of death of Ms. Collins once that come out, or is that?
That is not for us.
Gotcha.
So we are waiting just like everyone else. That'll come from the state crime lab. And so that won't come from us, but we will certainly address it when it comes.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on this good.
Happy Independence Day.
And happy birthday.
You say I wore my pen.
200. I wore my red. Does that count?
Yes, it does. But I always wear my red, though.
You do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.